How you doing, everyone? Just thought I'd share with you my recent project. I do a lot of spearfishing and diving for work, and in the last 3 or 4 months decided that it was time to try my hand out at building my own spear gun. I bought most of the parts online and the wood from Bunnings. Different websites are listed down below. Basically, all up it comes to just over 6 feet. It's resting on the ground there. The wood is a laminated Jarrah and Tasmanian oak. I laminate it together with an epoxy. The rubbers, I got 2. I had 3, as the pictures shown in a minute will demonstrate. But after test firing it earlier today, I decided that I didn't need that much power for the sort of fishing that I do. So 2 16mm bands. I have cut them about 5 centimeters shorter than recommended, just to get a little bit of extra kick out of it. The handle that I'm running on this gun is a Pure Marlin. According to a couple of reviews I found online, one of the only defects with it is that the safety is very easy to flick on and off, and on occasion you might not even realise that you've bumped it. Hopefully I won't encounter that. I bought the reel that goes with it. The reel cost $80 with 2mm Spectra that I imported from Neptonics. They do a lot of parts. Unfortunately, you also have to pay the extra postage to get it over. 2mm at 55 meters cost me about $80 also, so $160 worth of reel and line, about $110 worth of trigger mechanism right there. The shaft that I'm using on this gun is 7.5mm triple mini fin, 1, 2, 3. I bought this online from the website shown. It was on special. I got it for about $50. Usually they go for $60 to $80 with the mini. Also because there are 3, most spears will have 2. So I got the extra one on there. The total barrel length, so from the end of the wood to the beginning of the trigger mechanism, is 120. I got that from Bunnings. Wood cost me a total of about $15 to $20. The shaft is 20, 30, is 170. Ideally for this gun they recommend using a 160, but I decided 10 centimeters wouldn't make much of a difference. If anything, it would just give me a little bit of extra range. I took it out earlier today to float it to see if I needed any ballast. Ideally you want your gun to sink end heavy and nice and gentle when it's loaded. Once the spear is off, you want the gun to float. I put it in the water expecting it to be a bit light, but it turns out it's pretty much spot on. If anything, I could actually go with a 10 centimeter shorter shaft, go with the 160, and that would have it pretty much sinking flat. So I'm quite happy with the way it sits in the water and the way it sinks. As I said, I had 3 bands. I test fired it and I got more recoil than I could ever expected out of that. I've had a little bit of recoil in the past with some of my guns, but nothing like what I had from this. So obviously cutting my lackeys 5 centimeters shorter on all 3 that I had, and one of them was actually about 10 centimeters shorter than needed. That was an effort, I'll tell you that. Turned out to be too much. I just didn't trust the trigger mechanism, which is designed to have some power, but it's not exactly a tuner mech. It's designed for reef work. So I've taken the 3rd band off and kept it with just 2. She'll still get plenty of power out of that, and it should be fun to shoot. From my Spectra, it goes to the line anchor, which came with my Rob Allen reel actually. That came as part of the deal. I've put it to 720 a 71 kilo snap swivel attached to 2mm black mono with some 2mm copper crimps. Point in that is that once I've shot the fish, it's a pain in the ass trying to get this barb back out. So instead of it going through the fish, popping up and then having to fit it back through again, snap that one off, pull the line straight through the fish, snap it back on and go for your next one. What else is to do with this gun? That's about it. The bridles, because I made this completely by hand, I bought 3 meters of 2mm Dyneema, just here. Cut that to my length, and I bought a 10-pack of brass balls with a countersink. You buy those from Adreno. Website's the same as most of my projects down below. And to tie it off, I've just used some VB construction cord, 2mm, very strong, and I've used a clinch knot. You can YouTube that, or I might have put a video of my own up showing you how to make that knot. Very simple. It's a lot like a clove hitch. but with one simple difference. It's just one little move and it changes the whole lot. In running my 3 lackeys, I put them in earlier today, and because of the fact they sit one on top of the other, there's a 16mm difference between each lackey. I had originally put it on so that my largest lackey would be the one at the very top, thinking to myself, well, it's got to go the furthest distance down to the very beginning of my trigger mechanism over here, just there, and I'd worked my way down. So as a picture that I'll load will show, it was one lackey, another lackey, and then the third. When I went to load it, I found that I'd put them the wrong way around. When you load it, there's no point in loading your very last one first, because the lackeys join up together and you can't reach your 2 other fins. So you load the furthest one away, then the next one, then the next one. Unfortunately, that meant having to put my shortest lackey on the furthest hitch. That wasn't going to work for me. I did it once, way too powerful. So, other than taking that lackey off, I've also swapped them around. Just a little mistake that hopefully no one else will make. So these lackeys currently sit pretty even down the barrel, but in fact one is slightly longer than the other. It's just sitting on top over here. So that one's actually a couple of centimeters longer than this one here. So when you load, remember you've got to load the closest one to the end of the gun, and then go to your next powerful, and then your next one. That way you have to go over the top. You can't go underneath, it just doesn't work. One of the most interesting parts about making your own gun is figuring out how you're going to anchor your shaft to your barrel. You can buy ends that you can just put on the top if you're using a tubing. Because I'm making a wood one, it was going to be a lot of fidgeting around to try and get a round barrel end on the end of a square gun. What I did was the same as one of my mates did. I've taken a file and a saw. I basically filed in a groove through here. Then my line follows up the shaft, goes into this little groove here, creates a little lip here where I've also gone with a saw on each side of my shaft. This black bit hooks in over the top, goes around, and literally holds the shaft to the rest of the gun. This also means that there's very little stopping it. It means it keeps my spear good and level on the track that I routed in for it, and should help my accuracy. When I pull the trigger, obviously this line here is going to go slack as the spear moves up the shaft, up the barrel. And when it reaches the end, it's going to pull through here, releasing the line through here because they're both open. When I pull through, this here goes all the way back down again to the line release on the end of my handle, just here. So that's given me about just over 2 meters of cord already, and then it's connected by the snap swivel to my Spectra, which will then give me the extra line if I need it when I'm freediving. Alright, now I'm going to talk a bit more about the construction of the actual barrel, the shaping of the wood, and what tools I used. Originally it was 3 pieces of wood, as shown in the pictures. I laminated them together with an Arrowlight epoxy, and that took about 15-20 minutes to get it there, and then a couple of days to let it sit and dry and harden. After that, I used a table mounted router, and I routed a V-track down the barrel where my shaft now sits in quite comfortably. That went the total length up to the end. I tried originally using a ball mill, but mine was a 9 or 10 mil ball, and considering I'm only using a 7.5 mil shaft, it just left way too much play. So I've used a V shape, so my shaft will sit in anywhere it needs to. So I could use a wider shaft or even a smaller shaft and it would still fit in that V. After that, for this gun, I put a little chamfer on the router and tried to router out the edges to make them nice and round. One problem with that, because I don't have the highest end tools, I've got good tools, but obviously I'm on a budget. The ball bearing, the circular bearing on the end of one of my router bits came off. You see the discoloration of the wood just here. That actually just dug into the wood and took a whole lot out. I was rather upset when that happened, but I went to my local hardware store and got some putty and fixed that up, and so now it's good and smooth. So that was one of the only hitches that came along. I used a router to put in my space here for the lackeys. I used a 20 mil, Even though I'm only 16mm lackeys, they gave me a couple of mils worth of play. That's just good so that you're not too tight, you're not struggling to get them in to start. It's good and ergonomic. I used a belt sander, to shape my end down, just for personal preference. If you look at the amount of wood that you've got at the end there compared to what you've got over here, I've just shaved it in, you know, it's just to make it nice and pretty. What else have I used? Obviously I used a lot of files and sandpaper just to make sure that everything was nice and smooth. Before I coated it with an epoxy that I got from Neptonics, website's down below, they're in the US. I sanded it down to an 80 grit sandpaper and then put the coats on, and it's currently as smooth as could be thanks to the epoxy lacquer that I put on there. One of the longest processes that was required to build this gun was actually sanding the handle down, because obviously it goes from that. If you look how thin it gets compared to the top, it required quite a bit of sanding, and that was literally just me placing my belt sander upside down, and I stood there and I sanded away. Had my trigger mechanism already by then, and I just rested on top and placed it to see how much further I needed to go before it would fit. Because I got a female end on this, it worked very well. But that obviously took about half an hour to 40 minutes of just straight sanding, so you've got to consider time when you're doing this. Okay, if you're wondering how my handle stays connected to my barrel, it's not just a matter of sliding it on to the end that I've sanded. It's also got a little screw through here that goes all the way through. I drilled that through and connects up to a little nut on the other side. So obviously I did that very last to make sure that everything sat nice and smooth. I put some of my epoxy glue inside on the wood and a little bit on the screw also. So when I placed it, screwed it all in, left it good and tight, and I left it to dry for 5 whole days without touching it. The epoxy takes 7 hours to dry and 5 to 7 days to harden, to cure. So I've left that, and now it's good and strong. The handle won't twist because of the screw and the glue combined. Just a little bit of added strength.
We're gonna do a thank you very much. We're gonna do a little thing right now. Just sitting down thinking about this life of mine, all of my troubles and my good times.
Panther Cub, got a lot of love from the bottom to the top, underground to up above. Not your average rigmarole, just playing the role. Instead I set my path in the bowl. The mic I control with breath and control. A cold, make them lose control. Lo and behold, make these rhymes pay me like a hoe on the stroll. Told them it's a cold piece of work in the cold world.
All up comes to about $550 worth of parts and epoxies. It's takes about a day to shape the barrel. Probably takes, and then on top of that, you've got to add at least a week and a half as a minimum for the last coating of the epoxy lacquer, and an extra couple of days to glue the handle on. So to make a gun from nothing to something, take you about $550 and give yourself 3 weeks to do it comfortably.